Bayonetta as a character became synonymous with extravagant and boisterous action, mixing outlandish martial arts, gunplay, and demonic summoning magic. After a long and terrible development hell, Bayonetta 3 has finally come. After 2 wild games, how can a third entry be bold enough in a franchise made up of constant climaxing? As it turns out, we can climax a lot higher. How much higher? Find out in this Bayonetta 3 review. Being in a constant state of peak and climax inevitably becomes exhausting. Bayonetta 3 understands this by bookending its bombastic combat and gimmicky set pieces with stretches of relaxing exploration. This is nothing new to the Bayonetta games. Each title has its formula for exploration, combat, and sometimes a stage gimmick. Bayonetta 3 takes each of these pillars and blows them up to extreme proportions, almost to a sickening scope, where it borders on being unbearable. This is the biggest and most jam-packed entry yet, and it's also the longest by a substantial margin. Environments are still linear, but are as wide as Oprah Winfrey on an IMAX format. Areas are so large that it can become easy to get lost in the vast sweeping plains or dunes of the vistas. There is a lot of reasons to explore the environments in Bayonetta 3. There are lots of hidden collectibles, treasures, pleasures, and extreme measures when discovering an Alfheim portal. Bayonetta is going to need everything she can get if she hopes to brave the evil forces of the entity known as the Singularity. This mystery foe isn't set on using time travel to achieve creation through destruction like past villains like Baldur or Acer. Singularity is not even relying on the forces of Paradiso or Inferno. He is using created homunculi and is invading parallel worlds to achieve his goals. The only ones who can stop Singularity are Viola, a scrappy punk, Jean, and Bayonetta, and her alternate dimensional counterparts. The player will meet different Bayonettas from other universes, like the Chinese Bayonetta and her Doom Train, or Egyptian Bayonetta and her deadly fan weapons. There is a Bayonetta for every situation. The new weapons and demon slaves are by far the most bold additions to the franchise. The magic system is also completely revised, and wicked weave attacks cost nothing but get a nerf for balance. Magic is infinite, regenerates gradually, and is used for demon summons, which are now player-controlled like the legions in Astral Chain. The demon slaves come in many varieties, and can be used in all kinds of creative ways, in and out of combat. The Train Demon has players draw the tracks on the floor and can set moves as it rushes through foes. Phantom, the massive lava spider, can crawl on walls and has large sweeping fiery attacks. Bayonetta 3 even has a few hidden ones tucked away to be discovered, and there is not a single stinker among them. The Bayonetta games are known for their fluid combat systems, with endless potential for combos, and Bayonetta 3 is no exception. Stringing different attacks together and following through with a demon slave attack and chain juggling strikes to keep a foe in the air not only feels good, but it also looks cool too. Players are given more options than what anyone thought could be possible in a 3D style action game. At times, it can be overwhelming with what the infinite options offer. It's a problem you want to have, because it encourages replayability and also nudges players to be resourceful and adapt while in the much harder modes. Sadly, not everything works out as it should in Bayonetta 3. Some of the worst aspects from Bayonetta 2 have made their way in this latest adventure, and they are magnified. Oversized enemies in arenas that are several acres too large are some of the worst moments in Bayonetta 3. Battling these dweebs become a war of attrition due to how difficult it is to gauge the distance between Bayonetta and her target, and the camera can barely contain everything as it gets lost like it was swallowed by the fat folds of Orson Welles. These moments happen way too frequently, and it is compounded when the enemy designs are extremely ornate and have very busy patterns and intricate moving parts. Having multiple enemies like this getting in the way of the view make battles seem like a crapshoot, and comes off as a very sloppy design on the developer's part. Not all encounters play out like this, but there are enough to sour the experience. Oftentimes, these horrible bouts are bookended with long and empty stretches of running to the next fight, with some optional challenges peppering the map. Other times, the stages may have necessary puzzles to progress. While it is appreciated that Bayonetta 3 has all kinds of gimmicks to keep the experience diverse, having to use a bird demon slave to move objects on a scale in repeat playthroughs is tedious. Even worse is the stage gimmicks like the multiple varieties of rail shooters. These are guaranteed to make the gamer's hair turn white from having to retry them over and over while trying to earn a pure platinum rating. Other gimmicks like the kaiju battle is a really slow-moving version of rock, paper, scissors that is brief yet overstays its welcome. The gene stages that emulate elevator action are a light and amusing distraction, but there are so few of them that they barely leave any impression at all. The absolute biggest disappointment in Bayonetta 3 is Viola, the punk rock witch. Everything about this character is lame, from her combat style that feels too slow and unresponsive to how much of a joke she is in cutscenes. Viola gets no other weapons, can't use any other of the demon slaves, and her moveset is extremely limited. By the time the game comes to a close, everyone who plays Bayonetta 3 will utterly hate this loathsome butt monkey. Her role in the story and everything she stands for is insulting. Viola's character is such a dated concept that reeks of 2016 sensibilities, a telltale sign of Bayonetta 3's stalled development. From a repugnant hairstyle to the way the game obsesses with the multiverse and how there's noticeably less sexy camera angles than ever, it's hard to ignore how Bayonetta 3 has lost its sense of creativity and style. This was a game that suffered a long and troubled development, and it shows in many ways. The graphics engine is the same one Platinum Games has been using for over a decade now, and the developer's ambitions far exceed what it can do without making significant drawbacks. While the character modeling is still impeccable as ever, with a lot of attention given to facial expressions and detail, the environments have taken a hit. The stages in Bayonetta 3 are massive, but lack in detail. In some angles, it resembles a PlayStation 2 game, with its low-poly models and muddy textures. The draw distance is laughably low, and there is no dazzling veneer to the sweeping landscapes. The frame rate barely exceeds its 60 frames per second target, making Bayonetta 3 border on running like the laughable PlayStation 3 conversion of Bayonetta 1. Battles with these kind of chaotically designed enemies descend into a choppy bedlam where there is barely enough time to react to anything. Jennifer Hale is the new voice of Bayonetta, and while she does try her hardest, she does not sound like Bayonetta. Hale is a Canadian actress, and has to fake an English accent, while also has a more nasally voice than Helena Taylor.
Enzo, what was the weather forecast?
She ends up sounding like her Naomi Hunter voice from the PlayStation version of Metal Gear Solid than Bayonetta. Bayonetta 3 disappoints due to its sloppy design that may have been a result of a troubled development, and while also being a victim of the COVID scare. It lacks the polish from prior entries, and the developers went overboard with bloated stage gimmicks. While Bayonetta 3 is the weakest of all three, it is still a very good game that will give fans a lot of bang for their buck. There is enough changes and experimentation to justify this sequel, and the rating system is the most forgiving than ever for neophytes, while also providing enough high-level challenge for veterans.